Hello and welcome again to What If Natives Won, a video blog and channel about alternate history and American Indians, Native Americans, indigenous peoples. This is the 20th video of 28 planned ones. My name is Al Carroll. I'm Associate Professor of History at Northern Virginia Community College. I've written mostly about wars, veterans, human rights, and genocide. I'm also, together with Rob Schmidt of Blue Corn Comics, editing and putting out a short story collection, What If Natives Won. This is what this video blog and channel are about. There's a huge lack of alternate history written about American Indians, indigenous people. Many people don't like to think about genocides in America. They likely were never taught about them. Many don't want to be reminded, want to believe these genocides never happened, or that it was an accident. I've had great success using alternate history to teach my students, show them that absolutely nothing in history was inevitable. It never had to be. The worst of human history is always a conscious choice. How things turn out is based on how evil the evil choose to be, and how well and how strongly good people choose to stand up to them or stop them. The way things turned out in history took a very specific set of circumstances. Sometimes history turns on very small things. Change even one, you have an entirely different history, different present, different society. It may be hard to hear this, but we live right now in a dystopian world, one of the worst of all possible outcomes for anyone who is not white. America is today 98% non-native. At least 75 million to 112 million natives were killed by not one genocide, but a series of them, the last ending only in 2000 in Peru. And many more in America, Brazil, Canada, Guatemala, Argentina, Mexico, and elsewhere. On top of that is massive genocide denial. This is not taught in almost all American schools. There are racist images everywhere that are often not admitted to be racist. But much of this could change if Great Britain annexes Texas and California. War between the U.S. and Mexico is avoided. California Indian genocide is prevented. In the 19th video, we discussed the huge failures of the would-be Texas Republic. Its colonists always intended to take it from Mexico and make it a U.S. slave state. It only briefly tried to be independent because American President Van Buren turned them down. As a would-be nation, it failed. It was broke, with a failing economy, worthless money, and recognized by no one until very late, contrary to falsehoods. The government was so poorly run and had 9 capitals in 9 years. 2 separate navies sank from incompetence. They lost almost all their battles. Its brutal collection of pro-slavery insurgents, traitors, and illegal immigrants kind of broke away, mostly by bad luck, because of Mexico's internal troubles. The 2 things it did succeed at were ethnic cleansing of Mexicans and natives, and myths that justify or hide their atrocities. Insurgent army and rangers ethnically cleansed Mexicans from 5 cities: Victoria, San Patricio, Goliad, Refugio, and Nacogdoches. They also ethnically cleansed native tribes, including friendly and peaceful ones, killing 1/4 of them, except for the Karankawa, who were completely exterminated. To justify and even glamorize this, they created myths about Texas independence, fighting skill, love of freedom, Mexican inferiority and tyranny, and native savagery, including the myth of Karankawas being cannibals. Most of these myths are still around today, repeated uncritically in schools, textbooks, film and TV, and official websites and monuments. Not only did these myths continue after Texas became a U.S. state, so did ethnic cleansing. Racist white militias drove Mexicans out of Austin in 1853, Seguin in 1854, Matagorda in 1855, and Uvalde in 1857. Apache were driven onto reservations or hiding by the 1860s, Comanches by the 1870s, with forced starvation by mass killing of horses and buffalo. How could this have been stopped? One way is by Texas becoming a British colony. Texas President Sam Houston served 2 terms. During both of them, he asked Britain to make Texas a British colony. He did this hoping to pressure the U.S. to accept Texas as a slave state, but the British abolished slavery shortly before the Texas insurgency. Since slavery was the main motive for the uprising, it's unlikely Texas invaders accept giving up their slaves at first. The most likely time for this to happen is during Houston's 2nd term, 1841 to 44. Texas colonists were miserable and discouraged. If an anti-annexation candidate wins the U.S. presidency in 1844, they may be very willing to accept becoming British, especially since Britain ended slavery by buying off slave owners, paying them double the value of their slaves. Who would replace African slaves on Texas cotton plantations? In British sugar plantations, former slaves preferred to work for themselves from now on. Plantation owners brought in laborers from India. They would today be a large part of the Texas population, just as today there are over 2 million in the Caribbean. In Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname, they are the majority, and would be the majority in East Texas today, where cotton plantations once were. A British Texas would no longer ethnically cleanse Mexicans or natives, not because the British are less brutal or racist, but because wars cost money, and the British tried to avoid spending money on wars, if possible. They dealt with natives by economic dependency and assimilation, as in Canada. They kept most of their treaties, so Apache and Comanche get reserves in Texas, and some of the tribes ethnically cleansed may return. How would Mexico react? The nation owed over 50 million pounds to British creditors. There were rumors the British thought of demanding Mexican territory in exchange. Britain could insist on Mexican recognition that Texas was now British. One other rumor was that Britain wanted California. If they insist on both, perhaps even offering additional money to Mexico, now you have both territories as British. This means the only borders between the U.S. and Mexico are now territory neither really think is valuable, the Great Basin, Nevada, and Utah. The chance of a war between the two nations are now small. Mexico is no longer in financial trouble. The U.S. is blocked from the Pacific. The British have California, Oregon, and Texas up to its claims in present-day Colorado. But the U.S. is not likely to fight the British after their War of 1812, humiliation, and treaties. California under British control means there will be no California Indian genocide. The British will set up reserves and try assimilation instead of extermination. The end of ethnic cleansing in Texas, some of its native nations returning, and blocking California Indian genocide certainly counts as native victory. This is the end of the 20th video. I look forward to your comments and questions and will answer them as often as I can. Racism, genocide denial, childish behavior, personal attacks get deleted. But I do recognize some questions will be asked in ignorance because much of the facts I point to are new to most people. They were never taught about this. They have been raised in denial since denying indigenous genocides is taught in almost all public schools. Next time we will discuss what if a German-Comanche alliance defeats Texas. Please repost freely, like, subscribe, share, and comment. I'll post again in about a week. This has been What If Natives Won video blog and channel.